Okay, so welcome to the Sunday Sit hosted by the Monastic Academy. My name is Peter, which I think most or all of you know. Soryu and the other residents are on retreat mode right now. There's a packed house up there, so I came down to lead tonight. The topic today, I believe, is around leadership, specifically humble leadership. This came up in my mind because first, the Academy is, I think as most people know, a mindfulness training center, but it's also a leadership training center. And most of the time what we're actually doing is training service and leadership with mindfulness as a foundation. And so it's an integral part of the training that we do. And it's been coming up a lot lately because there's been a lot of people coming and going and a lot of shifts and leadership positions and seeing different styles and people coming through. So, I think it's important because there's a lack of good leaders, I would say, in the world. And regardless of your political leanings, I think it's just there's a lack of leadership and a lack of trust in general in terms of government and oftentimes in religion and pretty much in most of the public spheres of importance. There's sort of real lack of vision and guidance, and most of us just sort of break down, in my experience, to taking care of ourselves and taking care of our family and a few select friends, and it's hard to have a broader social or communal effort because decades of distrust, it feels like. So at the monastery we talk about training in these three core skills of wisdom, love, and power. Wisdom as in transcending our own views, transcending ourselves and the world to see things from a fresh and different perspective. Love as in caring for others, being able to walk in other people's shoes, take on other people's perspectives, and power as the ability to influence others to see our point of view, get them to see and follow what we think is right. And oftentimes, when I look around, it seems like there's an imbalance where some people have a lot of power, or a lot of wisdom, or a lot of love, but it's really hard to find any single individual or any community that has these three cultivated together and in harmony and balance. So there's a writer that I really like who said, human beings these days have godlike power, but are lacking in godlike wisdom and love. That we have a lot of power these days to change the environment, to recreate the entire landscape to how we want, but we haven't cultivated or trained similar levels in our own wisdom and our own love. Likewise, I find there's a lot of loving people who have really good intentions and can still end up either not taking on positions of power because they're worried about hurting other people. They feel inadequate or scared about doing the wrong thing, or have good intentions but kind of do the wrong thing. Sort of. When I was in college and kids would go to third world countries to do service missions to help out the locals, and sometimes it turns out they weren't really helping that much. It was more of a vacation of service, but not really giving them what they actually needed, but giving them what they thought they needed. Another classic wisdom conundrum that I often face when people come visit the academy of, is this just navel gazing where you're trying to leave the world and be in a cave and just feel good and not be engaged in the world? Sort of classic, are you just trying to transcend the world and disappear? Which can be a valid concern, because there are definitely people that only do that and might never come back into the world to be of service. So these are 3 skills that we train at the monastery. Right now we're in retreat mode, so everyone is just focusing on awakening, just focusing on cultivating their own wisdom, letting go, surrendering, letting go of their perspective, and being open to a new perspective that they couldn't have thought of or read before, but actually experience and realize through a different mode of perception and being and relating with experience. And it's really useful to take time, like we do every Sunday, to dedicate to just doing that, just trying to practice mindfulness, being aware, being present, and letting go of the past and future as a practice. But it's also important to practice leadership. And we practice leadership primarily by empowering people to be leaders. Soryu often says when he goes away to do his own solo retreats each year or go to California to help run the other center, he asks the community members, which he might do in 2 weeks, please come and support me and the other residents, because the only way you make good teachers is by community showing up to support bad teachers. A bad teacher gives good enough talks to become a good teacher. Likewise, leaders have to start off as bad leaders, and it's a bad leader until you become a good leader. And I remember when I was in college, I was part of this small group of this summer research cohort program. There was about 20 of us, and it was a program for the undergrads to do research and also to help go into grad school. So they taught you things like how to apply to grad school and take GREs and things like that. And I remember part of the curriculum was leadership. And we had to take a self-questionnaire, leadership questionnaire, asking all these different questions. And I remember I took mine, and I scored at the very bottom of the entire group. I was ranked last in leadership, which is kind of embarrassing because I thought there were other people in the room that were definitely not leaders. It's funny now to find myself in this position where over many years becoming more and more of a leader, bit by bit by bit, and I can see over the years how I did a little bit of a job, did a little bit of organizing this house, did a little bit of the monastery, did a little bit of teaching here, and bit by bit my confidence and my skills have grown and are still growing and still have a long ways to go. And so at the Academy we teach leadership by putting people in leadership positions before they're ready to do that job. And we create trustworthy leaders by having a community that gives direct feedback that's based on virtue and ethics. Not whether or not we like what you did, but whether or not what you did was good or effective or what's best for the community. And because we live together and train together and we're so close to each other, we have to give feedback to each other even when we don't want to. And it's interesting because on Friday, before we went on to retreat, I was talking to one of the newer residents who has only been around for a few weeks or a few months, and they were talking about how, in a lot of ways, being at the Academy is a lot easier than normal life. And I was kind of confused, because I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, because whenever I talk to alumni, we talk about how hard it was, and sort of like being in boot camp, and sort of get this foxhole mentality where the people you trained with were like war veterans or something, where like you suffered through a lot and now are bonded in this very deep way. That's kind of the experience. But this person was talking about how it's kind of easy. You can kind of just scooch by, and it's easy. And I was kind of confused talking to him about this. And I realized what he meant was, at least how I'm interpreting it, I don't want to speak for him, but how I was interpreting it was there is this container of like safety and like belonging that people can make mistakes and actually expect them to make mistakes, but that doesn't mean we kick them out or we ostracize them or shame them for being bad or wrong. And in fact, in the culture that a lot of us have grown up in, we just end up injuring ourselves and hurting ourselves whenever we think we made a mistake. So oftentimes my job is actually to reassure people that it's not such a big deal. You made a mistake, that's okay, just keep going. I've made a lot of mistakes, you've made a lot of mistakes, you're going to make a lot more mistakes. And the nice thing about a training center like ours is that it's a community where we can make mistakes and you're going to get feedback about it. And you still have to do the same job tomorrow, even better than today. So that element of a community is really important to building trustworthy and really humble leaders. Because no one can hide behind the role. For most of us, I know when I was working for many years, I had a boss who owned the company, and lovely guy, I'm still friends with him, and I see him when I can. But he was the boss the entire time I worked for him, and that power dynamic was there. You're the boss, I'm the employee. If you really want something, then we kind of have to do it, or else you're going to be upset and I won't get a raise, or I might get fired or something. But at the Academy it's nice because our leadership is distributed. Sometimes someone is the chant leader, at other times someone else is the director, at other times someone else is the teacher. And so in different contexts, someone's role and responsibility is to be the leader in that moment. And we can learn and see that, oh, it's not that this person is a bad person that I hate because he's a bad leader or something like that. It's really, it's just they're playing this role that I'm having a lot of reactions to. And soon enough, the role changes and someone else acquires that role. Someone else becomes a chant leader, someone else becomes the director, someone else becomes a kitchen manager, a chore master, or whatever the role is. And we learn to see how are we relating not to a person, but we often do and ascribe our feelings and reactions to this specific person, but oftentimes it's a relationship with his power and different leadership roles. So that's very helpful. And so it's interesting because a lot of times I know when I take on power and I've seen other people take on power, there's a way in which we think, I'm the leader, therefore everyone else should just do what I tell them to do. Which isn't a very good form of leadership. It's kind of like when you're a child and you're talking to your parents and you ask them, why do I have to do this? Why does this matter? And eventually, sometimes the parent just gets exacerbated and says, because I told you so. Or the teacher or coach or whatever. And that's usually a pretty bad reason and only will work for so long if you have to assert your position as the leader as the reason why you have to follow. It's not a very good leadership style. So I often think there's three things that I think is really important for leaders that I try to do myself in practice and what I try to teach the other residents when they take on leadership positions. One is basically listen more. Basically listen to the followers. Each person's different, each person has their own interests, and a lot of times people are actually not really reacting to an idea of being good or bad. Really, oftentimes people are just reacting because they don't feel like they're being included, or that they're not, their opinion isn't being counted, or that they don't feel like they matter. And simplest answer is just listening to people. Be clear that I am listening. You can trust me because I am actually listening, I'm willing to bet that my idea is at least partially not perfect. So I'm willing to give feedback, I'm willing to listen, regardless of the fact, even if 90% of the feedback is incorrect, there's probably something in there that's true, that can be useful, and as a leader, I'm willing to listen and find out what that is from people. Another thing that I often do, if any of you read the email, I quoted Laozi, who's the founder of Taoism, Chinese religion and philosophy, where he says, the best leader is the one where the people do the right things and they don't even know that they're being led. The second best leader is the one that is loved and appreciated, so people want to please the leader, and so they follow along. The third best leader is the one that's just respected. We respect the role, so we'll follow along. And the worst form of leadership is when the followers despise the leader and resent them. And pretty bad position if you're a leader in that scenario. But in the West, I think oftentimes we think as the leader, we should have everyone like me, or fear me, I guess. But there's this other form of leadership that Taoism talks about. It's kind of like leading from behind, where you set up conditions such that everyone kind of does the right thing naturally. And that what's naturally supposed to happen is the right thing that's supposed to happen. And so, I personally do this, which I hope the residents don't listen to, because then they'll know what I'm doing when I do it, is sort of like building consensus or buying. If I have an ideal, I will workshop it and talk to many of the other people first, before I ever introduce it to the whole group. And get feedback, listen to what they have to say, improve the idea, ask them what they think. Sometimes just try to drop the idea as, wouldn't it be a good idea if we did X, Y, or Z? And that's it. I don't say much more. This isn't very intentional or planned either, this just sort of just happens for me. And so by the time it becomes a public idea, several of the people sometimes think that they came up with the idea and have improved the idea on their own, so that it's not like I am asserting my authority of all of us now have to do this thing. It's more like there's just this general sense that this was the natural next thing to try out. And several people have been having this idea by the time that it gets formally introduced. So I like to say you need buy-in, or you need to get consensus, or sometimes there's a new resident thinking about joining the academy, and really by the time I talk to them or someone talks to them on the phone, pretty much like 90% of the work is already done. The way Story puts this on terms of the spiritual path, sort of like if you come to a Sunday sit or you come to a retreat, you've already kind of done 90% of the work just by showing up. You've already set up your life such that you're now open to practice and teaching, which is actually the hardest part to get to that point. And then it's just a matter of letting the practice unfold and staying in the room. I teach a relational meditation practice called circling. It can be very dramatic sometimes, and I always tell the people, listen, as long as you're in the room, you don't have to really follow anything that I say. Nothing that I say is a command, it's just an invitation. And as long as you're in the room, you've already done most of the work. And so I like to lead like that, where being humble and getting feedback from everyone and sort of just making it so that these ideas are now the group's ideas. It's just There are a lot of different leadership styles. The one I'm talking about right now is sort of leading from behind. It's a very Taoist kind of way of approaching it. But even the assertive power or Steve Jobs mode, all really good forms of leadership are similar in that they are based in not being selfish, basically, not being about the self-glory. That what really matters is good results, good consequences, good ideas, rather than taking things personally, trying to get a lot of attention or recognition or something. That's usually a bad leader, a lot of times. And we can practice mindfulness because it naturally helps us get past this blockage of self-centeredness. Recently, actually, I think today or yesterday was, I believe it's pronounced Vesak Day, which is the day of the Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and death, ultimate nirvana. And it's a holiday that's celebrated in most of Asia and anywhere where Buddhists are around. And in a lot of ways, Buddha and other spiritual heroes like Jesus were humble leaders. Jesus, if you hear from my Easter talk, I talked about this, before his death, washed the feet of his followers, showing himself as a humble servant. Buddha himself talked about how friendship is the foundation of this path, and that he was very strict about once you join the order of monks and nuns, things like caste and sex, gender don't matter. Everyone is equal once you join the order. And so mindfulness and this kind of meditation practice is very important because it helps us the same way that we have to lead people, whether it's our families or students or kids or friends or whatever, we also have to learn how to lead ourselves. Oftentimes when we're in distress, it can feel like there's conflicting, different groups in our own mind. And sometimes the loudest and not necessarily the most mature voice wins out in our head. And so we can use mindfulness to practice how to stay present, how to actually listen to each of these voices. Even the mean, angry ones often have something to say. They're trying to say something. What are they trying to say? As a good leader, trying to listen to what is this part of me that's angry or upset or stuck in some way. What's it trying to tell me? What's the lesson here? Trying to build the right conditions so that my practice flows naturally rather than always trying to force it as a strength of will. So in a lot of ways we can use this mindfulness practice to learn how to lead ourselves. And the more that we can do that, the more we show that we can be trustworthy, that people can give us their trust in me to be the leader because they can see, oh, this is a person who knows how to lead themselves, who's in control of themselves, and so I feel safe to follow this person. Not because they're paying me, not because I'm supposed to, because their quote-unquote job title is being the leader, but because they are, by their very character and behavior and actions, demonstrating that they are compassionate, are calm, are thoughtful, are caring, can listen to others. And so this link between mindfulness and being of service and being a good leader are intimately linked. Ultimately, a good leader is someone who can see more clearly, can see reality more clearly. Those don't have delusional blinders on. And in the long run, the person that's on the side of reality is going to win. In the short term, deceptive people can maybe win, but in the long term, truth and reality usually wins. So the person that can see that is usually on the better side of history. And so there's a very intimate link between morality, virtue, ethics, not in the judgmental, you're supposed to follow rules type of way, but in the doing good, being honest, having integrity, having good character, and being mindful. The more mindful you are, the more you realize this is a good action that I should do more of, and this is a bad action I should not do. And if we have that insight of this is something I should do, or this is something I shouldn't do, this is helpful, and this is not helpful, and we continue to do things that aren't helpful, that we know we shouldn't be doing, then we're naturally not going to be very mindful, because we don't want to be mindful. None of us want to be in the place where I know this is not the thing I should do, and I'm still doing it. And so on some subtle level, we build blinders and stuck places where we can't really see reality very well anymore. And the more and more we follow our intuition of what's good and what's well, the more we become clear, and the more clear we become, the more calm and able we are to just lead ourselves and lead other people. One of the big things that we're trying to train is humble leaders. Leaders that can take on power, which doesn't mean that they're pushovers necessarily, but that they're not in it for themselves, that they're in it because it's the right thing to do. So they can see reality a little bit clearer and can clearly see what is good and what's not good, and they're willing to take the hit of getting it wrong many, many times. Even the best leaders get it wrong a lot. And it's really important to have a community and practice and a training, place of training where that's not just tolerated but supported and encouraged. That we can have a place where we don't expect perfection from each other, we don't expect each other to be saints, and we're also not complacent and say, well, human nature is just evil or something. But rather a place where we see in each other their highest good, and we care about that, and we want to support each other and being able to practice, being able to lead, and continue learning both how to lead ourselves and therefore be able to lead other people. So, take some time to do the most important part of actual practice. Find a position where you can straighten up and settle in. Find a comfortable position where your body is relaxed but focused. For this first practice, I'll lead us in our guidance. As usual, if you have any technique, any method that's working for you right now, that you have some momentum behind that you want to follow, feel free to do that. And if you want to follow along with me, feel free to follow along as well. For this period, we're going to focus on listening. Depending on just conditions and circumstances that at this point, right now, being in this room, you no longer have control over, just everything that happened in the past. Right now, you might have a calm mind, you might have an unsettled mind. Either option is fine. It's not you causing this mind to happen right now, it's just arising. So if you have a calm mind, you find it remains calm, you can focus your awareness on listening out. listening to the birds chirping, listen to the rain gently falling. And let yourself enjoy listening to nature. Listen to the world. And if you find that your mind has a lot to say right now, a lot of voices occurring, then let yourself just listen to those voices without judgment, wondering, curious, what importance, what message might this have for me? Not needing to believe what the voice is saying, not needing to identify with the voices, but honoring that they're arising and being open to the possibility that they may or may not have something to say. You just ask yourself, what message do you have for me? And if at any time you find yourself settling in, you can listen out. And if you find a lot of arising memories or voices or mental chatter, feel free to just ask, what message is this for me? If you ask this question, what message does this have for me, and you're not getting an answer, that's also fine. You can keep staying with the voice or the feeling, and keep asking the question, staying in that place of not knowing, and let that ripen. And if you want, you can always choose to hear out as well. If you get tired or distracted, you can always just lead yourself back with a gentle reminder. Listen again. take a 5-minute break, stretch, get water, use the bathroom. Return 5 minutes. second practice, actually kind of want to pull the group here. You can do a traditional practice of cultivating rest in our bodies, allowing ourselves to focus on the good aspects of our experience and abide in that state if it's available. Another option that's a little bit more interactive is if there's one volunteer that wants to practice with me, we'll do a sort of a mindful dialogue around, dialogue's not the right word, but mindful practice around mainly me practicing the art of listening and reflecting back your experience. And it's one of the practices we do at the monastery to learn how to practice receiving and relating to someone's experience. And everyone else can kind of watch and notice your own reactions and notice how in a way that a lot of times we're connected and impacting each other even when we might not be directly talking to each other. There's still a connection and impact that's always occurring in the space. So either the option is fine, but I thought it might be fun to try something that's more taking the practice a step further to be one-on-one. So anyone want to try that out? Or go for the normal thing?
Not quite sure what you're asking us to volunteer for. If you're listening, that means somebody has something to offer.
Yeah, so the basic structure would be something like, I would ask the person, say, what's it like for you right now? And then I'll try to listen and reflect back what I think I heard and felt, and check to see if that was accurate or not. And we just sort of run that loop a few times. And then I might share what's arising in me in the moment. So it's sort of a mindful practice in relationship with what's happening in this moment right now, and for me primarily to be paying attention to the other person and receiving and listening, and the other person not having that responsibility except just being in their own practice and sharing whatever they wish about what's arising for them. So it's a nice practice to try to see what it's like when you feel seen or heard. It's okay if no one wants to do it. I have another normal practice, not that common.
So you just want someone to tell you where they are, what they're feeling?
Pretty much.
I could tell you that, if no one else wants to.
Okay. Well, so I offered the group two options. We can just do a normal practice, each of our own selves, or we can do an interactive practice.
Oh, I apologize, I was a little late coming back.
That's fine. I just don't want to put the pressure on you that we don't need a volunteer, but if anyone wants to volunteer, I'll offer that as an option. So.
Well then, I probably would just go with the group process.
Individual, each of us. Not one.
Well, I'm confused now, because I didn't hear the first options.
Yeah, so the first option would just be, I'll just do a normal guidance on feel good and feel relaxed and cultivate rest. Or this more interactive one-on-one practice.
I have a question. related to your talk or the topic of leadership.
Can you actually save that? Because there's actually, I should have said this at the beginning, read you through fourth section, which is Q&A. But I like that you had a question. Great. All right, so.
It's hard not to separate the two. I guess all the thoughts that have arisen are the questions. So the exercise is, I'm sorry to ask you to explain it again, but...
It's basically, I'm going to ask you what it's like right now.
Okay.
You might share exactly what you just shared.
Okay.
I would reflect back something like, it sounds like a lot is coming up and there's some confusion.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask more questions.
Yes. I'll volunteer.
Great. Is everyone else good at this? You can always just practice open listening and notice what's arising in your own experience and how you're relating to what's happening. And this is a good practice because I find in interactions, particularly when there's a leader and follower, there is often an impact that happens. Someone says something, or I say something to someone else, and there's an immediate impact, a felt impact a lot of times, regardless of whether or not I agree with that impact or I want that impact. Someone just says something like, we should really do this, and I might feel defensive or upset or hurt or sad, even though intellectually I might not agree with that feeling, or I don't want to feel that feeling right now, I feel it. And if I'm not willing to acknowledge that, oftentimes I'll react to that feeling, subtly not liking it, or the opposite, that I really like it. Someone says something good, like, oh, Peter, you're so wise, and everything you say is great, and tell us more, or something. And then I crave that, and I can get reactive around wanting more of that. So this is a mindful practice of noticing what's arising, what's the impact that's just happening. I don't necessarily endorse or believe in the impact, but it's happening, and to the degree that we're mindful and can acknowledge that impact, it has less control over us. Rather than what Soya's recently been talking about, shame, about feeling things or thinking things and not acknowledging it. It's like a secret that we're ashamed of. So in this sense, you just notice what's arising for you. I'll do some guidance here in terms of what we're doing. Does that make sense? Good with this? It's not different than what we normally do, so put it on sketch. Great. Do you mind maybe like sitting right here, sort of closer?
Sure.
So let's all take a moment just to settle in real quick. Notice what it's like in our bodies, our minds. What are we seeing? What are we hearing? What are we feeling? You get the sense there was some nervousness in the room. So this is just an experiment game we'll play for 15 minutes or so. It doesn't have to be a big deal. Just like in our mindfulness practice, it's not about getting to a certain state or being a certain way or curing anything in this session. We're just being aware and present to whatever's arising right now, not needing to judge or identify with what it is, letting it arise, and be with it, and let it go. So in a moment, I'll ring the bell. We can look at each other, and I'll just begin by asking a question, and we'll just see what happens for the next short period of time. What's your experience like right now?
Warmth, anticipation, um, a low level of excitement. About a week ago, I had a nice transition from thinking, and this seems to coincide with that.
Can I pause real quick just to see if I got it so far? Sounds like you started with warmth, sense of anticipation, excitement, and then I imagine you had a memory or a thought about a week ago,
Yes.
something that happened that seems like it's related to this shift.
It keeps coming back, yes.
What's this that keeps coming back?
Breaking the trance of unworthiness.
You smiled as you said that.
A friend gave me a book,
Oh.
Radical Acceptance, and I've only read a few pages, but it keeps coming back to me.
I imagine it was very impactful. Or...
Yes. And refreshing. Old feelings are like a partly cloudy day that they're disappearing. The clouds are disappearing as I apply this new feeling to day-to-day life.
What's it like sharing this right now? Is there like a sense of warmth or joy?
Yes, yes. It's a trusted place. Healthy feedback. I guess I'm, in a way, sharing that I walked out of a swamp. And I understand the swamp now. The trance of unworthiness.
I'm imagining you're like looking back at it. Is there a feeling of when you look at it, how do you relate to it?
I'm feeling a weight lifted, and I'm feeling an awareness that my previous 2-year period has been clouded with the trance of unworthiness. So I'm excited to read on in this book. I have fallen back into the swamp, only momentarily over the week, but with feelings, bad feelings and old feelings, but so are you. His trick, he taught. Pushing your mind aside and focusing on your breath. It's new to me. It's a nice trick. It works. It has been.
So there's like a relief, a weight lifted from this trance of unworthiness that was
Yes.
heavy on you.
Yes.
And now it sounds like you have different options, like Soryu's put the mind aside and just focus on the breath and
Yes.
other things from this book that are helping you.
Yes. Soryu's trick is almost like a gentle doorstop or a tire chock that prevents the rolling cart of hours of thinking of feeling unworthy about myself. It's quite enlightening to me.
Is there a feeling, a felt sense or feeling tone to this new place?
There is, and it's a new type of fear, but I think it's because it's almost a fun fear or an exciting fear that's coming, I believe, in my life now. Also, I've encountered, I guess, moments of almost deja vu, back to when I was a young man and growing in my adolescent, and interacting in nature with friends and their fond memories. So those two things. Yeah.
So like excited, fun fear.
Yeah.
And these memories. I didn't catch that second part. Like playing in the woods.
Yeah. It may be as, I guess the last week we've seen spring grow so fast. And that may be it also. Or maybe it's been a few springs since I felt this good.
Can you locate it in, like, is it spatially locatable right now?
How do you mean?
Like, do you feel that good feeling now in your body? Or how do you know it's, what is it present right now, I guess?
These old feelings, or just the general feelings? The fond feelings, they come in moments. It's almost as if my memory, it's like someone put a little piece of tape over my old fond memory button, and now it's been removed. So now when the time arises and as I cruise through life and I go, oh, it's there, I can see it clearly and feel it. So
It's like someone removed the tape, and now when it naturally links, it's just, you
yeah,
can see it, you can be there.
yeah.
What's it like right now?
I feel a connection to this far-off bird, wondering its name. Does anyone know? Yeah.
Woodpecker, I think. Maybe.
I wonder how far away. I guess in a way it could be like Soryu's trick with the breath. Instead of focusing on the breath, you focus on the faraway woodpecker. Maybe. There's so many forms of meditation. Thank you for expressing and sharing the knowledge of it. Gratitude is something I feel.
Yeah, it's interesting. As we're talking, I'm noticing sort of like a nice sinking feeling, or I feel more settled in my body, and expansive in the room. And then a part of me is like looking for things to share or say. And then, I don't know if it's necessary. Connect that all to your experience?
I do feel connected to my experience, yes.
I appreciate this like slight smile you have.
Well, I feel a division in me because we've been speaking of leadership. So I'm trying to hold the side of those questions that I have to ask as all this kind of relates to leadership, I guess. And I didn't mean to draw it into this side. I guess I just did by saying the word.
It's okay. So there's like two sides. One side is potent questions.
What you've, I guess, down the path that you've asked, the questions I've tried to stay there, I guess. Maybe. I don't know.
What's the other side?
Memories of when at different times in my life when I was a leader, and times when I worked alone and I didn't need to be a leader. So there are questions there, yeah, if you want to wait until the end.
Cool.
Is that okay?
I think so. I'm just trying to get your sense of where you are now. So it's like there's a
Yeah.
place of questions, and then there's like the memories of when you were a leader, and
Yeah.
also when you worked
Yeah.
by yourself.
Yeah, well, the feelings of fondness of childhood and the feelings of the birds and the outside and
Oh, that's one
the
side.
trance of unworthiness being broken.
Oh.
And then this other side of leadership,
Oh.
Q&A, hold back, I guess. So, I guess in a way, sitting here speaking to you,
Oh.
when the trance of unworthiness is broken,
Oh.
you feel worthy enough to volunteer to speak.
Oh.
I do,
Yeah.
and that's a big change
Oh.
for me. This is all, I guess, my personal experience.
Yeah, so it's funny because I noticed like a one from my heart, and then I just wanted to feel that more. So you're like making a connection where now that this trance is more broken,
Yes.
there's naturally natural stepping into volunteering.
Yeah, feelings of worthiness.
Transworthiness. I'm gonna wrap it up. Is there anything else? Sure.
Thank you.
I guess we can move to Q&A. We're all excited to get to. That's sort of a practice form that we, a version that we sometimes do. In some parts of the world we call it circling, although each group does it in a different language. It's a practice we do at the academy to help train the skill of sort of both be able to like enter other people's worlds better and their reality and kind of get their felt experience of what it's like to be them, but at the same time not losing ourselves and just becoming that person fully, but actually still being able to notice our own felt experience and our relationship with others. We're doing a retreat of that in July. That's can be more intense and there's different forms and different practices of that. So thanks for volunteering and thanks for participating by witnessing and being present with your experience. Great, so this is the last period, last 25 minutes or so. Let's open Q&A, reports, comments, anything anyone wants to share. Anything else? Open game.
Share. I just wanted to sort of share how I was feeling and sort of some of the things that came up for me when you two were talking. And it was a really joyful experience. I felt like the meditation before was really joyful as well. And for a lot of reasons, but like I liked the imagery, just you could hear when you commented that he had a smile on his face, like I could, even though I wasn't looking at him, like you could hear when somebody's smiling and talking. So like I could feel that like positive energy, and it reminded me of times like sometimes I wake up and I feel like I'm already stressed or upset, and then other times I feel like I wake up and I'm already joyful, and so it's like it kind of just reminded me of just that feeling of like, wow, yeah, that does happen, where you just like get this extra joy and you kind of wake up from something. And I liked the idea of like looking back at a swamp, and also the tape being taken off the button. Like I liked all that imagery. And yeah, I felt like I had really wanted that practice to happen, as when you gave us the two choices. So I was sort of debating whether I should volunteer, and I definitely feel like happy that I didn't volunteer, because it sounded like maybe Soryu's talk from last week was being referenced. I wasn't here last week, so I felt like, well, I got this kind of like gift of knowing a little bit from that without getting to experience it myself. So yeah, and I also feel gratitude and like for all of the things that you've shared. And being at the monastery 2 weeks ago there was a lot of gratitude in me at that time. Just knowing that this exists, and all of the people who've made it exist, and just the amazing benefit that so many have gotten and will get from it. So I'm just really thankful.
Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask, so did you notice, as you was talking and with the smile and everything, did you notice like your own state changing in response? There was like more joy, or?
Yeah, I did. And when you asked him where in his body he was feeling it, like I connected with my own body, and I felt like I could pinpoint, like I was like, oh yeah, like I feel it in my fingers, and then this like stripe kind of down in front of me. But yeah, it was interesting to think about connecting it with a feeling, and I realized so often I don't think of that. Like I just think of it in my head, like I'm almost like it's a thought instead of a feeling. But it usually is in my body when I really try to pinpoint it.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because a lot of modern culture is surrounded around this sort of fixation on the idea of the individual, and I sometimes teach or coach people in mindfulness, and it's interesting that I definitely have this pattern, but it's more obvious when I'm teaching someone else, where they have like this constant sort of cloud of inadequacy or self-shaming. They go, oh, I'm so bad at practice, I can't do it. Sort of like all these self-negativity thoughts come up. But then if I question them a little bit about what's been going on for them, it's like, oh, you've been traveling, and you just got through a breakup, and this, that, and the other happened, and how much the world impacts us, and our community impacts us, and our surroundings impact us. And just in this short exercise, noticing how, even though I'm not directly engaged, there's an impact that's happening, but there's a relationship that's already there. That we're all connected in some form. And so, it's not just about if I was just a little bit stronger, if I was just a little bit smarter, or if I was just X more, then I would be good. There's actually the community matters, your surroundings matter, and your space matters. And I think we often don't take that seriously enough. And it's funny too also, sort of, it took me a long time to realize where I thought I was feeling my breath, and I was actually just having an idea of the feeling of my breath. And then actually feeling my breath, like, this is what my breath actually feels like. And then maybe a few weeks later I go, no, that was still an idea. This is what my breath actually feels like. A few more weeks might go by. Oh, no, that was just still an idea. I remember my first year being at the academy. After every retreat, I go, that's what meditation is. And then next retreat. Oh, okay. I'm seeing a pattern where I don't really know what meditation is. So that reminded me of a very good lesson. That's for sure.
I think I can ask my question,
Good.
if it's okay. It's about leadership or any form of exchange when if there's leadership, there's usually a goal. We're all trying to do this person's better at it. But if there is, in a sense, something intangible or something that you can't give to somebody in an obvious way, because that would be taking away their own freedom to learn for themselves. So, to me it seems like a trick that in the most benign sense, a parent, is a kind of, there's so much love usually for a sense of, for me anyway, not wanting to impose and wanting the child to have its full naivete, its own way, and learn by its own mistake or its own honest heart journey. And if I tell or try to, I don't want to impose. So I can understand leadership in terms of proficiency of various things, demonstrating it so others can feel permission and get permission to try it themselves and see if they can develop proficiency. But working with character and the growth of an individual, I don't understand leadership in that. I understand love and sort of setting and protection and nurturing, but I don't understand leadership. Am I confused, or am I not a good parent, or?
Right. So the question is sort of around how to lead someone, in this case sort of like kids or children or students, in specifically like character and virtue, ethical behavior without imposing, because in some sense you can't really you can't give that to them, but you want to give them the space for them to learn it and develop it themselves. But how do you lead them in that if you can't give it?
Not exactly, because I don't feel I have a right to lead anyone ethically either. So developing character, that's exactly what I don't want to impose my version of my character. It's developed, but I'm not sure it's the desired development,
Right.
For that person.
Right.
It's meaningful to me, my development. But I find I'm in a problem where there's a kind of, I haven't given any direction or imposition top-heavy, I believe, and then that itself has become heavy.
Right.
Like, you know, give me something to work with, and I'm saying, you know, you have to discover that. I can't impose it. I don't want to impose it. I love you too much to take away your own individuality of that, in that discovery process of who you are. And it would be, and I don't even, it just doesn't seem to make sense at all to me to put any idealism on another person.
Right.
I never wanted that on me. That's why I feel sensitive about it. And people have tried, and I say, good try, but you know,
Right.
I have to feel it myself. And there are contagious people that I found I admire and then I emulate.
Right.
And I see that that's natural in the development of this person as a child. But they're not a child anymore, you know.
Right.
This is adolescence where.
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah, no, that's a very deep question. First, I should say I'm not a parent myself, so to some degree, I don't know if I have a better perspective, but I can give you my perspective on this. And to some degree, I think parents and kids, my sense is the burden for the parent is you can never do everything for the child, and out of love and care, you wish you could, but you just can't. And for the child, there's also love for the parent, but it seems to be, at least in modern cultural understanding, necessity to also break free and develop your own character and personhood, and that can be painful on both sides. And there can be the desire on both sides, wishing, please tell me what I should do, or don't tell me what to do, and also, I wish I could tell you what to do, and I also don't want to impose my life as your life. Just last week, I was talking to one of my friends, I was talking to one of my friends who has a child, who's also one of my good friends, and we were talking about life, and it's interesting because for me, I had good parents, but they couldn't do everything for me. They came from Korea. It was very hard for them. It wasn't the best household all the time. And so to a large degree, I had to learn how to do a lot of stuff on my own. Things that I think a lot of kids in America take for granted, at least from a certain social, economic background. I had to get my own job for the first time. I bought my own first car. I did a lot of stuff on my own. I had to learn that on my own. And in some ways, it would be easy to resent my parents or be upset by that. In other ways, it gave me a lot of strength and virtue and character that just learning through hardship taught me a lot. That my other friend who grew up with a lot of more resources, whose parents could provide to them, didn't have to learn those hard lessons early on, and in certain ways gained certain strengths from that, and also has certain weaknesses. And it's interesting because I don't have the strengths they have, but they also don't have the strengths I have. I don't have their weaknesses, and they don't have my weaknesses. So it's interesting how their different childhoods create a different balance of strengths and weaknesses. In some sense, I don't know if you can, as you wisely said, you don't want to impose your life on them, and they have to, in some degree, become their own person and make their own choices, and the best we can do is support each other. One of the things I see at the Academy that I think is related is someone steps into power and they start over caring for the group or other people. They see someone doing something that they think is lazy or bad or whatever, and they'll create more rules or just do too much to kind of micromanage or over control the situation. And it's not good. It's not healthy. And it comes from a good place, but it's not really their job. The job of the leader is to create good conditions and give honest feedback. And we hope that everyone finds good teachers or good communities where they're voluntarily joining themselves to get this training. Guests sometimes come to the academy and I tell them, you might see us giving each other feedback, or Surya giving me feedback that might be very harsh or blunt or strict, that you yourself shouldn't expect to receive because you didn't sign up for the same thing. I moved to Vermont, quit my job, signing up for that training, and I want that feedback. And people can be really strict on me, and I can be really strict to them because we mutually signed up for that. But that's different from, if someone's doing something outside, like smoking a cigarette, another person just comes up and starts yelling at them, telling them how that's bad for you. Sort of like, whoa, we don't have that relationship. What are you doing right now? I can make my own choices, So in that way, the Buddha said that the basis of the spiritual path, the most important thing is good friendship. And when people leave, when guests come and leave, particularly people who are thinking of joining full-time, becoming residents, and they leave, I tell them, you don't necessarily have to come back and become a resident. Not everyone's going to come here and become a resident. Everyone has their own life, and not everyone is destined to live in a monastic center, and that's fine. It's not, like you said, my goal isn't to impose my life onto everyone else. It's not the point. But what I do hope is that you find at least one honest friend who will keep you accountable and care about you as a person rather than honestly, a lot of friendship is, which is like mutual pleasure or self-gain, where I'll hang out with you when it's pleasurable and fun, but as soon as it's not advantageous anymore, then I'm not going to be a friend anymore or something. And so I think I kind of relate to you in a very small way of people come and I really care about them, and it's hard for me to see them go because I think sometimes it's fine, but sometimes it seems like they're just lost and confused and I don't know where they're going to end up. And I want them to end up in a good place. And I don't know what that is, but the best I can hope for is I hope you find someone or a community or something where they care about you. Just like we were talking about before, the container of the community, your surroundings matter a lot. And there's at least one person we trust that can give us honest feedback. That's worth a lot, and it's actually pretty rare to find, and it's one of the main reasons I joined the center. And also, I would just say, in terms of I think it's true, there's certain things like we don't want to impose our values onto other people necessarily. I'm hesitating right now because I don't know if I want to impose my values right now. But I do get the sense that there might be some universal things like honesty that are more universal. And if you're honest, you'll probably be more mindful. And if you're more mindful, you'll probably be more happy in this sort of more unconditional way. And if we're dishonest, will have more self-shame and secrets and feelings of inadequacy, and I think that's something we can cultivate in ourselves and in all of our relationships. With all of my relationships and friends, I try to be very as honest as I can, and I want that from other people. And to me, that's not like I'm imposing a value onto anyone. It's more like, I know you're probably going to suffer if you live a dishonest life. Whatever life you end up picking up, if it's a dishonest one, it's probably not going to work out very well. And you'll be happier if you're honest. And I can still support and help people that can't do that fully. But I have an open question in my mind right now. Maybe there's certain values that don't have to be imposing a lifestyle, but more things that are just kind of generally true. Honesty might be one. Hope that's helpful, makes sense in some way.
Sure. Thank you. Peter is your name?
Yeah.
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey. Thanks for asking.
Thank you.
I want to comment on just this idea of sort of whether someone should lead or whether it's just sort of inherently wrong to lead. And I'm a teacher, so in my teacher training, like I've thought a lot about classrooms I've been in and teachers, and I also have a daughter that's a teenager and she talks to me about her teachers, and I think like sometimes you have so many different styles. Some teachers are very kind of lax, and some teachers create this structure that you kind of question, like, oh, I have to do this to get a pencil, or but like as a student in a classroom, so I can really value a teacher who has processes and is sort of a leader who requires things of the students, because in classes where there isn't as much leadership, you can get less out of it as a student, and kind of, you can kind of go in and be like, wow, I wish someone would take care of this problem because it's impacting what I'm getting out of this class, whether it's students talking or, just a lack of, what's the word? Anyway, just where, like, I just come to appreciate something about leadership where a structure is created, because I think it can benefit everyone a little bit more.
Yeah. I think the truth is that everyone is leading all the time. Everyone has power in a group. People have different levels of institutional backed power, but everyone still has some basic power and leadership. I was in New York City last week, and again, my friend's mom said a very wise thing. She said something like, people are responsible for what they say, and they're also responsible for what they don't say. And it's interesting to me that what brings to mind is the times when there is a designated leader and they're not leading, and the group is expecting them to lead. It doesn't feel safe, and it feels confusing, and everyone's kind of like, where are the boundaries? Who's the leader right now? And in those times, everyone feels more relaxed if there's just a decisive leader that says, we're doing this at 7 o'clock, bring these things. It just feels good. Someone's looking out for us, someone knows what's going to happen. I don't have to think about it. They've got it under control. But it's a spectrum. There are other leaders who say, at 6:04 you should be brushing your teeth, at 6:05 you should be using the toilet, at 6:06 you should be in the shower. And you go, whoa, what are you doing? I didn't sign up for that. Well, now you're just trying to micromanage my life. And so there's a certain level of I think, again, trust and agreement of what are we mutually signing up for, what's the relationship here, and you know, sometimes people don't like feedback that's given, but later appreciate it. I know I've definitely had friends who I've given or they've given me feedback, or Suri's given me feedback, and I don't like it in the moment at all. But minutes, hours, days, months later, I go, they were right. I appreciate that they were willing to tell me even though I didn't like it at all. Of course, there's a spectrum. Sometimes people give me feedback and it's more them being upset than feedback from me. So mindfulness is so good. The more calm and grounded I am, the more discernment I can have of what is this feedback.
I do. And it has to do with Jeffrey, actually, your story about the march of domestication. It sounds, I don't have kids either, I've always wanted them, but I've witnessed, my neighbor is a blonde-haired, or a strawberry or a blueberry-eyed boy. He's 5 years old, and he came up to me yesterday with a bag of mint and violets. And he says, "James, look what I have." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "I invented something." And he stuffs his little hand in the bag and says, "A mint violet sandwich." And he stuffs it in his mouth. And then he proceeds to take me around the house and show me the pile of saplings that he's cut down that are between 6 and 8 feet long, because his mom showed him how to use the loppers. And he went out and he's building a fort. And the knowledge that youth have is vast, and we domesticate it out of them, you know. And I have to tell you a story which kind of relates to other things that have been said here. I have a friend who's a cabinet maker. He's like he's really like a shaman to me, I guess. He's taught me a lot of things, but among others. But he has a young son in this time in his life, and he's 12 years old, and he's helping his cabinet maker father build cabinets, and it's just nothing more than building boxes and then stapling this plywood on the back. And they're doing this one day, and Ed says, "It's the wrong size. We have to break this apart." So they take a rubber mallet and they knock the back of the cabinet off, and it's a piece of plywood with these, staples in the edge of it. So he gives his son a pair of pliers to remove the staples, and he says, "Take all these staples out. I'll be back in 5 minutes. We'll do this." He leaves the room. A few moments goes by. His son, 12 years old, believes that if the staple gun will shoot the nails in, it'll shoot them out. So he takes the staples out of the gun and puts the gun on the reverse direction and pulls the trigger, and it shoots the staples out clean. And to this day, my friend was taught this method of fixing something, which happens quite common, a much easier way, because his younger son had the perspective. So perspective is really the key, I believe. And respecting the perspective of others, and respecting that, and having the humility maybe that even though you may have a lifetime of experience, you can always learn something from someone else's description, or quite honestly dialogue. I think our greatest gift is dialogue. When we start to get excited with one another and we start to collaborate and we You know, we think about collaborating ideas. We're excellent at this. It triggers ideas in each other when we speak to each other. And so I guess that's what I just wanted to say. Was the story about the cabinet maker's son who, and how we should navigate our youth and really try to cultivate, you know, their knowledge in some way. In other parts of my life, I've worked alone almost for years now here in Burlington, but in my previous life, I ran a ski shop and I managed 17 people, and I hated it. It was hard, and I think back now as you speak about leadership and about how it ties into that, and how you can go down the direction of what you may think is being a leader, but actually you're creating more work for yourself than you're leading. When I was in high school, I moved to a new area, and I was a pretty good soccer player, and I started as a freshman in center mid, and I played all through. And as I was leading the team, as a freshman, I was a stranger. And looking back, I was the best leader then. I didn't say much. We had our best season as a sophomore. We were 14-3. I began to say more. I used to attribute it to losing good players as they graduated, but as I became a senior, I remember being a very poor leader. And maybe at that time I had lost the real zeal to chase the ball, and I don't know, but looking back, it was really nice to hear you describe that a leader is someone that you don't notice is there. That's the most desirable. That was neat to hear in that number one spot. And in one of your previous talks, you spoke of being a zero, of going to the International Space Station and replacing 3 crewmen of the 6 and wanting to be a zero to stabilize the environment, to elevate the whole, and so not causing ruckus among the systems that were fragile. So those are all the things I wanted to say. Thank you.
Well, thanks for tying it back. I think there's a way in which we can all learn how to be humble and have humility without disempowering ourselves. That actually is a powerful position to be on the side of reality and truth, and then lead from there.